Welcome to the webinar. The webinar will begin shortly. Welcome to the webinar. The webinar will begin shortly. Welcome to the webinar. The webinar will begin shortly. Welcome to the webinar. The webinar will begin shortly. Welcome to the webinar. The webinar will begin shortly. Welcome to the webinar. The webinar will begin shortly.
Hello everyone and welcome to the webinar. My name is Kevin Gaunt and I shall be the moderator for this webinar. The webinar is entitled How Innovative Pipelining Technologies Offer a TOTEX Approach to Delivering PR19 Outcomes, and will be presented by Tim Farley from CSD Sanivar. There will be a short time for questions and answers at the end of the presentation, but please note the presenter's details, which will be shown during the Q&A session should you wish to contact them for further information. Please post any questions you have using the Q&A button in Microsoft Teams. Details of the next webinars will be shown at the end of this session. So thank you, and I would now like to hand over to Tim. So if you could unmute your mic, Tim, and share your screen, please.
You should have the presentation in front of you, Kevin.
Right. No, I don't. Can you share?
I have indeed. Try again. Are you there?
No, yes, I'm here, but that doesn't seem to be working. I'll tell you, I'll try something slightly different. I'll stop sharing. You should simply have taken over from me, but I'll stop sharing my slide. And if you could now click on the share button again, you've got your PowerPoint open.
PowerPoint's open. Obviously, I'll have to shut it down now because it's on full screen. But PowerPoint's there. Okay, share contents.
It should just be the share button on the bottom right hand side of your screen there, or
bottom right. No, it's top left.
Top left. Right. Okay.
Top right.
I may have a different screen because I'm doing the moderating, but you click the share, but nothing has appeared. Oh, there we are. Right, we're in business. We're in business.
In business, all that up and running, are you? And everybody can hear me, presumably.
Yeah, that's fine. I'll mute my mic and off we go then, Tim. So apologies for the slight technical hitch, but I think we're there.
Okay, and good afternoon, everybody, and thanks for taking time out of your schedule this afternoon to attend this webinar. During the next 20 minutes or so, I'll be talking about Sanivar's innovative lining technologies, which are new to the UK, although well established around the world and certainly across Europe, where they have a provenance of some 30+ years in restoring integrity to pressure pipeline systems. So a little bit about the company. We are part of Sanivar UK is part of an industrial group which was originally founded in 1993 and is based in the northeast of England. Some of you may well know us under the CSD umbrella, making pipe seals, etc. And the company has now branched out into lining technologies. The company overall specialises in high-spec industrial technologies on high-value capital projects, and we have opened a UK office as a JV with Amex Sanivar, who are a German Swiss-owned manufacturer of lining materials based in Germany. So what I'm going to talk about specifically today is the next generation of pressure pipe lining solutions. We have two lining options within our range of technologies. One, titled SaniLine, is a thin wall, high pressure rated, flexible CIPP type inversion liner. And the second, which I'm going to dwell on in greater length today, is SaniTube, which is thin wall, high pressure rated pull-in liner. Both liners are well proven across the European utility sector, with over 1 million metres relined, and both approved for potable water use across Europe, and that's a point I'll be coming back to later in the presentation. So just to set everything in context, don't want to teach grandma to suck eggs on this particular presentation, but I thought it was worth reminding ourselves of the key UK water sector challenges. Obviously leakage, is paramount there on potable water systems and indeed on waste systems as well. And where Sanivar linings can contribute to that main outcome is that the linings provide fast and cost-effective refurbishment and repair for water and wastewater pipelines. In terms of water quality, the Sanivar linings can recondition aging infrastructure, so restores pipeline to original condition, improving flow, water quality, and the general state of the pipeline. In terms of mitigation of pollution incidents, Sanivar linings refurbish pipelines, so prevent leakage and contamination into water courses and the wider environment from deteriorating assets. Customer experience, because of the installation technology, which we're going to talk about later in the presentation, fast and efficient installation of no-dig linings minimises disruption, mitigates HSE risks associated with very heavy civils work, particularly when you're replacing a pipe with open cut or even slip lining technologies. This lining technology is much smaller footprint, carbon footprint in terms of excavation and general operations, and it reduces customer outage because of the time it takes to install and refurbish a pipeline using these methods. And topical, as we move into the post-COVID world, you know, the liners are very COVID friendly, for want of a better word, in the fact that they are not labour extensive. They're easy to install with minimal handling and observing social distancing. Typically a 4-man team can install a liner of up to a couple of 100 meters once excavations have been made, 2 at the launch pit and 2 at the reception pit. So just to touch briefly on Saniline, because as I say, the main focus of the presentation today is going to be on Sanitube because of its innovative qualities. So Saniline is a cured in place liner. So those of you who are familiar with lining technologies and inversion, you know, there's many liners in place out there that have been used over a number of years. However, what differentiates Saniline from other inversion liners is 16 bar pressure rating, which makes it ideal for rising or pump main refurbishments, and an ultra thin wall, which provides flexibility for the liner to navigate bends without digging down and excavating. Depending on diameter and radius of bends, we're confident that in most scenarios we can navigate around 45-degree bends. We have navigated and pulled through swan necks, etc., changes of gradient. So the ultra thin wall lining also means that you don't get a loss of flow. Typical lining thickness is 3 mil, but has very strong durability, but that added flexibility to make it more conducive to complex pipelines. So moving on to Sanitube, this really is an innovative lining technology, quite different from traditional CIPP liners. It's a high performance, has many of the same qualities as the Saniline that I mentioned earlier, pressure rated to up to 32 bar unsupported, so certainly suitable for using on any pipelines, pressure pipelines up to 16 bar and over operating pressures. And it's a pull-in liner, so there's no adhesion, no adhesives, no toxic chemicals involved in curing, and critically, no curing time either. The liner is a pull-through liner and is then inflated by compressed air, typically to a test pressure of 6 bar, where it is held to make sure that the liner is effectively stretched out against the pipe and fill the pipe void. It's then sealed off with Sanigrip end connectors, which you can see on the pallet on the right hand side there, and that then anchors the liner in place and provides an NP16 flange fitting for onward infrastructure. So how it works, As I say, the Sanitube is a textile liner with a double-sided thermoplastic coating. Current diameter ranges from DN80 to DN400, although we are looking to extend that to 600 because we're very conscious that within the UK there's quite a lot of 36-inch, 24 and 36-inch trunk mains where it will be ideal for refurbishment beyond the distribution areas. It's suitable for water, sewage and industrial applications, gas, oil and petrol, and has been tested with all those mediums and found to be very successful. And effectively, Sanitube is just pulled through via a standard winch and is then reconnected to the hose pipe using a flange coupling. And you can see it looks rather complex, but it's very typical to any other sort of end connector, end restraint, flange adapter stroke coupling. And you can see the assembly of that on the right of the screen there. So the main advantages is the extensive lengths that can be accommodated. We've just completed a world record pull of 1.5 kilometres in a single pull, including bends of up to 90 degrees. As I say, every job is bespoke. You know, Sanivar commit to doing a full survey and a full evaluation of bends, pipe configurations, pipe condition before we would propose our lining or quote for any particular projects. But certainly there is the ability to regularly pull through bends of 45 degrees plus. It would depend on the radius and whether they're sweat bends or tight elbows and indeed on the diameter of the lining and the hose pipe before we could commit fully. Lifetime of over 50 years is guaranteed, and it's been tested under laboratory conditions to verify that. And as I say, we have actually got 30 years providence in the field around Europe on possible water mains. I've already alluded to the fact that no resin or impregnation or curing time, so it's very quick to install. Pressure resistant, but both positive and negative pressures. It's capable of burst pressures of over 34 bar without a hose pipe, and it is resistant to vacuums. Efficient and safe to install. There's no need for any specialist equipment. You don't need inversion drums or the time delays and or heating that you require with other CIPP cured liners. So a few case studies. This is one we did in the Farley estuary, working with Southwest Water and their H5O Alliance. Effectively, it was a 300mm ductile iron pipe refurbishment, which went out under the under an outfall into the River Farley or the estuary, which was tidal. So there were challenges over the working periods and time limitations imposed by the tide. There were environmental constraints, shellfish estuary, so we couldn't risk any sort of pollution in the refurbishment of the ductile iron element of the pipe work. And obviously, being a very popular and attractive tourist destination, there were lots of customer challenges as well. So effectively, the outcome was to use Sanitube to reline the section of the main adjacent to a new bypass pipe. We used a coffer dam, which you can see there on the right hand side, to extend the working time in the well, and we inserted Sanitube out into the estuary to refurbish the old 300mm pipe, and that was a successful submission for the environmental award at the UK STT Awards in 2019, which seems like an age ago now, but there we are. Very successful project. This is a smaller scale project, but equally applicable. A job we did for Anglian Water with public sewer services. Effectively, it was 110mm PVC rising main refurbishment. The rising main, the pressure pipeline, was in close proximity to the pumping station, and as such, was under quite considerable pressure when the pumps kicked in at the pumping station. The PVC main ran under a road bridge which crossed the watercourse, and over time HGV traffic and everything over the road bridge had compromised the bridge deck and had caused fractures and had a burst history on the PVC main in the bridge deck, and that had led to leakages from the bridge deck down into the watercourse adjacent to a public footpath. So effectively, you know, with the road that actually ran over the bridge was provided access to a local community, and an extent, had that road had to be shut for any length of time, it would have meant extensive diversions of up to 7 or 8 miles. So what we opted for was to use Sanitube to refurbish a 30 metre section under the bridge, digging a launch chamber, which you can see there in the main picture, and then a reception chamber the other side of the bridge, winching the liner through, which is the process again you can see in the middle picture, 100 mil, then inflating it with compressed air, holding it under test pressure for a couple of hours to ensure that the liner had fully inflated, and then closing off with the couplings, which were then pieced up to the stub of the pre-existing PVC main. So that job, in terms of the lining scope of that work, was completed within about two hours total. Obviously, there was then time for pressure testing, backfilling, etc., but substantively reduced the time on site and customer disruption. This is one of our most recent jobs, which was done with Yorkshire Water and Peter Duffy. Quite a complex project. It was refurbishment of 130 metres of rising main. The location was particularly sensitive, as you can see from the right-hand picture there, in that it ran. It was a pipe bridge that ran over the River Aire and adjacent to the mainline railway. So no question of being able to dig down to refurbish that pipe. And the pipe bridge under the railway line over the river was leaking like a shower every time the pumps turned on, with effluent gushing out into the watercourse. So it was quite an emergency and needed early remediation via trenchless technology. And Sanivar stepped in with Peter Duffy and used 300 mil Sanitube to line out the 130 metre section. In fact, it came off and down the embankment at 350. So you'll see that we use tapers at the end of the 350 mil line, being fed in on the left-hand picture in folded form into the pipe at 300 mil, but exiting the pipe down the embankment at 350 and then being taken back to tapered at 300. You can just see the liner emerging in the middle picture on the left-hand side of the two tapers, and then pieced up with inflated, tested, pieced up with Sani-grip, and then bolted onto the flange ends of the taper to get a seal, which I think you can't see, that hasn't been sealed off on the right-hand picture. But a real challenging job involving navigation of tapers, changes in pipe diameter. We actually found a redundant air valve chamber halfway up the embankment as well, but we successfully pulled through that and also navigated a few swan neck bends coming off the embankment with no problem at all. So although Yorkshire Water had actually proposed the job as a temporary repair and we're going to install a full bypass to take the pipe bridge out of service completely, which they may well do. We have now bought them time, with at least a 50-year asset life extension to review options and prioritise work. So just a couple of brief slides now to look at cost efficiencies. You can see in terms of productivity per day, I'm sure some of you might raise some eyebrows at some of these figures, but in terms of 30 metres a day open cut, you probably get sacked for only achieving 30 metres a day. However, the Sanitube does far exceed other techniques in terms of productivity, reduced construction period, and in terms of relative cost against other technologies. So just really indicative of where Sanitube sits against other technologies. And again, in terms of comparisons by technique, you know, just an indicator here of you know, where Sanivar sits. I know there is an actual error on that 25 mil to 400 mil. As I said, it's 80 to 400 mil, but it does compare favourably against other pipe refurbishment techniques in general. Copies of this slide are available if you want to contact me afterwards, you know, to sort of take away. And I know that the session is also being recorded, and presumably the presentation will be available from Pump Centre afterwards. So just again, a brief summary of the benefits of using Sanitube. As I say, speed, you know, we can achieve some pretty remarkable numbers in terms of lengths of refurbishment within a working shift. Against open cut, it's widely regarded as savings of up to 80% can be achieved against open cut solutions. It's certainly safer in terms of reduced civil works, the ability to work at a social distance, and far less customer intervention and disruption. Quality, Sanitube's tested and certified to a life expectancy of over 50 years. It's applicable for use in pressure mains operating up to 16 bar with no reduction in pressure limit at all. Thin wall, high strength, so no reduction in bore. Typically the maximum thickness of Sanitube would be 3.5 mil in the larger diameters. And so, you know, in terms of providing smooth flow and minimal loss of bore, it's a great refurbishment technique. So in summary about Sanivar in general, our linings represent the next generation of CIPP. It's well established as a no-dig option across European utilities, and we have worldwide case studies in water, oil and gas sectors. It's thin wall epoxy-free linings, flexibility and scope, including lengths and complex pipe configurations. The Sanivar liners address key PR19 outcomes in the UK water sector. The liners are RAS approved and they are Regulation 31 compliant. We are awaiting final approval on post-testing. That was the gold nugget that I was hoping to be able to offer you today in today's presentation. Unfortunately, as most of you know, Intertek and DWI don't necessarily work at the same pace as some of us in the sector. The final leaching test was completed last Thursday for Sanitube, so the water is now under analysis. We have completed similar tests around Europe, so we're not anticipating any problem with that sample and with getting the Regulation 31 approval. Independently, Anglian Water have recently done a materials and contact test with Sanitube and have found no issues at all with it. We have a number of potable water mains lined up to refurbish, Regulation 31 approval pending, and realistically we would expect to know by the end of May, you know, whether we have any problems as a result of that testing regime. The final certification may take a couple of months after reports are written up and you know, the final certificate is awarded. But I would be confident that certainly within 2 months we will be able to install Sanitube on potable water systems, and we're certainly happy to engage in preliminary discussions on any projects within that sector. So we have put together a sample box which includes case studies, samples of both Sanitube and Saniline, product brochures, technical brochures, installation guides, and my contact details are on the next slide. So if anybody wants a sample box mailed out to them to whatever address, home or business, then if you drop me a line, then I can facilitate that. So thanks for listening to the presentation. I think the final slide, yeah, we're on track, the final slide. So if I haven't answered any questions in the course of the presentation, or anybody wants to ask any specifics, now's your opportunity, and please take a note of my contact details and get in touch if you want further details. Back to you, Kevin.
Thanks, Tim. Thank you very much for that. Got a couple of questions that we can probably get through in the next few minutes. The first one it relates to the fact that you mentioned a life exceeding 50 years in your presentation, and the question is, what are the relative liner lives for Saniline and Sanitube? So what I think that's getting at, is there any difference between the two? And is it the same for both dirty and clean water applications?
In essence, yes, in terms of the material content. The material content of both liners is very similar. One is a bonded, you apply adhesive to fix to the interior of the pipe with a Saniline, and whereas with Sanitube it is just inflated by air and held under pressure against the pipeline. But both systems have been tested, gone through a vigorous testing regime of million cycles on pumping and sort of inflate, deflate, variables, abrasion tests, etc., which is critical, you know, particularly on the dirty water side, you know, where you get grit and all sorts of things flowing through the pipeline. So extensive abrasion tests, etc. And you know, we can offer a 50-year life extension and on both pipelines, effectively on both systems.
Brilliant. Okay. And the second question we've got is it's quite similar, really, in terms of life and the condition of the pipework specifically. Is there any sort of limit in terms of the condition of the existing pipework for which these techniques are okay? So I think what that's getting at is that clearly with some of the dirty water pipes, you can end up with fairly rough surfaces on the internal bore of the pipework. There's obviously a consideration of how clean the bore of the pipework can be before you install the liners. So are there any issues in terms of condition of existing pipework that would preclude these techniques being used?
I've been in the water industry for 30 odd years. There's always issues, you know. Nothing. Whenever you get a set of drawings, it's never what's in the ground. Yeah. The key issues, yes, obviously the condition of the pipe is critical. Neither liner is a full structural liner, so it cannot support itself if it was just laid in the ground. You know, it would collapse. So it does depend on the host pipe for form and to maintain its cylindrical shape. So it's a refurbishment technique. It is not a replacement technique. That said, you know, a full circumferential crack or slight misalignment of pipe, certainly holes, punctures, you know, can all be readily accommodated. It's slightly easier with Sanitube because obviously Sanitube isn't dependent on the cleanliness of the interior of the pipeline, whereas Saniline, as with any other adhesion liner, you know, you do need it to be more or less dry and certainly you know, suitable for a fixing, you know, with an adhesive fix, whereas Sanitube is a little bit more tolerant. Obviously every pipeline should be cameraed before, you know, as I say, you find all sorts of things, empty chambers, bends, you know, some repair fittings can cause problems in lining technologies. So you'd want to do a CCTV survey. With Sanitube, you can usually get away with a high pressure wash and sending a pig down and just making sure there's no really harsh surfaces or full breaks or jagged edges that would actually rip the liner when you actually pull it through. With Saniline, you have to be a little bit more careful, a little bit more cautious, and make sure the liner is clean and suitable for an adhesive solution. So Sanitube offers greater tolerance, Both systems are dependent on the existence of a host pipe, but the condition of that pipe, again, it depends on diameter, it depends on the overall condition. You know, if you're looking across a 1 kilometre stretch and you had a circumferential break halfway down, or you had puncture holes or erosion in particular spots, you'd probably be all right. And you can certainly use it as a repair technique, you know, a very effective repair technique under roads, crossings, where you're looking for a no-dig solution that is fast and efficient. But as with every job, and as I did say during the presentation, Sanivar are there to hold your hand, to look at jobs, and if there is a job that is unsuitable, we'll be the first to put our hands up. You know, this is new technology, this is innovation, we can't afford to go putting it in speculatively and it to be unsuccessful.
Excellent. Well, thanks very much indeed, Tim, and thank you for those who've attended. The next 2 sessions are shown on the screen now, so we look forward to seeing you there. Thanks everyone, and goodbye for now.
Thanks.
Thank you,
Kevin.
Tim.
Thank you.